How does a movement with no army, no territory, and no political power conquer the heart of the world's greatest empire? In 64 AD, Rome was a symphony of screams. For 6 days, the Great Fire consumed the city, leaving behind a landscape of ash and a population seething with rage. The Emperor Nero, desperate to deflect blame, needed a villain. He found one in a community that thrived in the shadows, their survival dependent on invisibility. These were the followers of an executed teacher from Judea, a network whose secretive meetings in homes and catacombs were suddenly twisted into proof of a vast conspiracy against Rome itself. Branded as enemies of the state, they faced the full, terrifying might of imperial power. Yet from behind a bolted wooden door, this small, terrified group of failures began a silent war of belief. They turned the very heart of the empire into their battlefield, not with swords, but with an idea. This is the story of the most profound reversal in history, how the invisible guests of Rome would one day inherit the world. In the labyrinthine heart of Rome, within the chaotic, densely packed Subura district, life was a constant roar. The clatter of carts on cobblestones, the symphony of a million lives lived in public. Yet, beneath this cacophony, a different sound was taking root: silence. In the upper floors of towering, rickety insulae, behind bolted wooden doors, a new community gathered. They were artisans, slaves, merchants, and soldiers bound by a shared, clandestine faith. Their gatherings were hushed, their prayers whispered. Secrecy was not a choice. It was the very architecture of their survival in this sprawling metropolis. To be seen, to be known, was to risk everything in the face of potential reprisal. They moved through the city like ghosts, their presence an echo in the alleyways, a rumor on the wind. Every shared meal was a calculated risk, every secret greeting a quiet defiance. They were cultivating an internal world of profound belief while navigating an external one that was, at best, indifferent and, at worst, lethally hostile. This fragile, invisible network, held together by conviction and caution, was unknowingly poised on the edge of a catastrophe that would drag it from the shadows into the very center of the imperial stage, transforming its protective shield into a prosecutor's ultimate weapon. It began near the Circus Maximus, a flicker in one of the merchant shops that lined the grand arena. But this was no ordinary fire. Fanned by a strong summer wind, the flames leaped with terrifying speed, devouring the timber-framed insulae and oil-soaked warehouses that defined Lower Rome. For 6 days and 7 nights, the city screamed. The fire became a living entity, a monstrous beast of orange and red that consumed entire districts. Panic erupted as a tide of humanity poured into the streets, a chaotic exodus with no clear destination. The air grew thick with acrid smoke, a choking blanket pierced by the crash of collapsing structures and the desperate cries of the trapped. In this inferno, social strata dissolved. Senator and slave alike fled the inexorable advance of the blaze. The invisible community, once hidden within the city's fabric, was now cast out with everyone else, their secret sanctuaries turned to ash. Their carefully constructed anonymity was incinerated along with their homes, leaving them exposed and vulnerable in a city that was about to demand a terrible sacrifice for its immense loss. The world was burning, and when the embers cooled, it would be a new, more dangerous world for them all. As smoke gave way to a desolate, ashen landscape, a new storm was gathering in the halls of power. Emperor Nero, already a figure of controversy, faced an enraged populace. Whispers in the refugee camps and blackened streets laid the blame at his feet, accusing him of starting the fire for his own grandiose building projects. His popularity, already fragile, was crumbling. He needed a scapegoat, and he needed one fast. His advisors, Tigellinus among them, saw an opportunity in the public suspicion of foreign cults. The Christians, with their secretive meetings, their talk of a kingdom not of this world, and their refusal to participate in imperial rites, were perfect targets. Their very invisibility, once a defense, was reframed as evidence of a sinister conspiracy. In the cool, marble halls of his new Domus Aurea, a plan was forged. It was a cold, political calculation designed to redirect public fury. The emperor's shadow fell upon the small community, marking them not as victims of the fire, but as its perpetrators. The state, with all its immense power, was about to turn its gaze upon the atheists who hated the human race. The hunt was about to begin, sanctioned from the very pinnacle of the Roman world. Beneath the unrelenting sun and the grandeur of Rome, Another city was being carved from the soft volcanic tufa stone. This was not a city of marble and gold, but of profound shadow and sacred silence. The catacombs. Driven from the light by Nero's decree, the followers of the way went underground, literally. These were not merely burial sites for the honored departed. They became the pulsating arteries of a secret faith, a sprawling network of tunnels where the living communed with their memories and with each other. Here, far from the watchful eyes of the Praetorian Guard, hushed whispers replaced public proclamations. The symbols hastily etched into the damp, cool walls. The simple outline of a fish, an anchor, a shepherd with his flock, were a silent, powerful language of hope understood only by the initiated. In the dense, flickering light of clay oil lamps, they shared meager bread and wine, their faces a chiaroscuro mosaic of solemn hope and shared apprehension. Each gathering was an audacious act of defiance, a testament that their community was not broken but merely hidden from the world. They were transforming these corridors of the gone into sanctuaries of life, a subterranean fortress of belief. From these depths, a spiritual revolution was being plotted, not with swords, but with stories and a shared, unshakable conviction, spreading like unseen roots beneath the very foundations of the empire. The great fire had receded, but its embers glowed hot in the Roman psyche, fanned by imperial propaganda. For the followers of the way, public life instantly ceased to exist. Driven from the sun-drenched forums and bustling workshops into the city's hidden veins, they became a phantom community. Survival demanded a new architecture of faith, built not of stone and marble, but of absolute trust. This was the birth of the invisible web. Communication became a whispered, high-stakes art form. A courier carrying bread to a wealthy patron's villa might also carry memorized scripture for a dozen households. A fisherman mending his nets by the Tiber could trace a simple fish in the dirt, a fleeting symbol intelligible only to another believer. Meetings were no longer in open porticos, but in the cramped cellars of tenement blocks or the hushed, subterranean passages of the catacombs, under the pretext of funerary rites. This secrecy, their only shield, was paradoxically used by the state as proof of their malevolent conspiracies. They were accused of hatred of the human race precisely because they had to hide from it. Every shared meal in a flickering, candlelit room, every baptism in a hidden cistern, was a profound act of defiance. They were weaving a network of silent resistance, a social fabric strong enough to outlast the very empire that sought to tear it limb from limb. The arena was Rome's ultimate argument. In the sun-scorched sand of the Colosseum, the state demonstrated its absolute power. Here, the followers of the Nazarene were not just punished. They were transformed into a public spectacle, a lesson against defiance. Labeled as atheists for refusing to worship the emperor and blamed for every misfortune, their termination was meant to be a final, terrifying statement. Yet, a profound paradox unfolded. As the condemned were let out, the jeering crowds expected pleas for mercy. Instead, they witnessed an unnerving calm, a serene acceptance that defied all logic. These individuals, facing a gruesome end, sang hymns. They prayed not for their own lives, but for their persecutors. This was not the behavior of criminals, but of people utterly convinced of a reality beyond the arena's walls. For a Roman citizen, whose own gods were transactional and capricious, this display of unwavering faith in the face of annihilation was both baffling and deeply compelling. The tool designed to crush the movement was unintentionally becoming its most powerful recruiting sermon, planting seeds of doubt in the very heart of the empire. The roar of the crowd was slowly changing its tone. While the arenas provided a stage for public martyrdom, the true revolution was happening in the shadows. The Christian movement's most potent weapon was not defiance, but community. In a rigidly stratified Rome where social status was everything, these secret gatherings offered a radical alternative, a family bound not by blood or wealth, but by belief. Slaves sat beside free men, and patrician women shared bread with laborers. This network became a lifeline during the empire's frequent crises. When plague swept through the city and Roman society abandoned the sick to their fate, the Christians stayed behind. They nursed the ill, buried the departed with dignity, and cared for the orphaned and widowed. Their actions were a stark contrast to the state's indifference. They were building a parallel society, a welfare system based on compassion that offered tangible security and hope. This was not a military conquest aimed at toppling monuments of stone, but a quiet, persistent inheritance of the human heart. They were winning the empire not by challenging its legions, but by demonstrating a more compelling way to live within it, slowly capturing the very soul of Roman life from the inside out.